Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of From the Soapbox. My guest today is Margaret Spalletta, a registered veterinary technician and practice consultant manager here at AAHA. Margaret is also an advocate for AAHA's End of Life Care Accreditation program. So naturally, we talked about end of life care, what the EOLC accreditation looks like, and which types of practices can benefit from it. She also shared some examples of how teams can learn more about end of life care through our End of Life Care Certificate program and educational opportunities offered by other leading end of life care organizations. And one thing I love about talking with Margaret is that I always leave the conversations feeling inspired. Whether it's stories from her visits to practices or creative ideas for honoring pets and families at a patient's end of life experience, I always learn something new. And now it's your turn. So without further ado, getting her time to talk from the soapbox, Margaret Spalletta. Margaret, welcome. So excited to have you here.
Thank you, Dr. Sengler. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited.
Oh, yes. I'm excited to have this conversation because you're such an inspiring person to talk to, and you are such a wealth of knowledge on the topic of end of life care before. I know we've talked about it previously. And I always get so many amazing new ideas when I talk to you about it. So I'm excited
Thank you.
I'm excited to chat more about it today.
Likewise.
Yeah, and I know not everyone out there really knows that AAHA even that we have a separate accreditation for end of life care, and that's something that we really you in particular advocate for and have a special focus on. So I'm excited for others to learn more about that. And just kind of as the first part of that, I would love it if you would share um, your journey, your story with all of our listeners in terms of how you first became interested in end of life care and how that's grown and kind of informed a lot of the work that you do now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wish I had some amazing story as to how I came to be here. But as I've been a credential technician for over 20 years now, and I have been out of practice for quite some time. But I've been involved in many euthanasias, and they've all stuck with me in some fashion. So I did find AHA in 2016 and very gratefully fell into the role of working on end of life care accreditation. This was something that we started to do and add a focus in. And I was very humbled to kind of take part in this. So it's something that has been very eye-opening for me, and has shifted my perception and my mindset in a very deeply and rewarding way. So it was through AHA that I've come to find end of life care accreditation, and now has really, I look back on the euthanasias that I have been a part of in practice, and I can smile and just kind of remember that it's something that I really appreciate and I really loved. And this has kind of helped me to kind of change this mindset now for our members.
That's amazing, and happy 10 years. I didn't realize that you'd been at AHA for so long.
It's crazy.
You've just been doing so much amazing work and really leading the charge in a lot of ways and advocating for end of life care and for practices that really kind of want to honor the beauty in it and make it the most as good as it can possibly be.
Sure.
Because we know that it is so important and it is such an honor to be able to
Yep.
help our patients and help the families that we serve make that end of life experience as comfortable and as pain-free and as honoring of the life of the pet and the bond that they share with their family. So I'm so grateful that has meant so much to you and that you're able to bring that love and that excitement to
It's really,
all the rest of us.
Absolutely. And we'll talk a lot about this, but it's really opened my eyes and my knowledge surrounding all that end of life care is and how we can change our perception. They shouldn't B, just kind of a negative stigma that they usually are in our practices. And they can be something that's really beautiful. And that's what we try and bring to light with end of life care accreditation.
Yeah, just thinking about how often, we hear the general public say things to veterinary professionals about how it must be the hardest part of our job.
Mm-hmm.
And for so many of us, it's not the hardest part of our job because
Sure.
we know how vital it is, how essential it is, and um, how much it can mean to
Yeah.
quality of life for everybody involved.
Yep.
And that makes it feel just a little bit easier, but still very important. We want to get it right as much as we possibly can. And because of that, we've at AHA we have this end of life care accreditation um, that practices of different types can pursue. And I would love it if you could just share like more about like what is the accreditation, who can pursue it, um, just kind of briefly what's involved in that, and kind of what that looks like.
Absolutely. So, um, the internal kind of term that we use is EOLC, but that obviously stands for End of Life Care Accreditation. And this is the first additional accreditation model outside of our traditional and referral standards that we have for our members. So this is very, very big deal, and it's very important. It allows practices to take an introspective look at their current, policies, practices, end of life care specialties, and just gives them a really good look internally. There's always things that we can learn, even things we want to praise and, celebrate with euthanasias. And this allows us the avenue to learn from those and to grow and truly make it a specialized just environment in our practice. So end of life care accreditation, we do have some parameters surrounding it, and I'll definitely go into that. But the goal with end of life care ultimately is to strive just for continuity with these appointments and to continue to learn and learn how to adapt when certain things arise. Because no euthanasia is the same. We know this. And there's always going to be situations that we learn from. And it's through some of the standards that help add, that kind of that context. So as far as end of life care as a whole, so we do, it is for our traditional, our accredited members. They can add on end of life care. And then what's really exciting is this is for mobile practitioners as well, who focus specifically on end of life care, which we wanted to do for a long time. We know this is a very, very growing market with our mobile practitioners who see end of life care. So this is specifically for them. And this is also a very great opportunity to partner between our mobile practitioners and our traditional veterinarians, which is great. So, and as we know, AAHA accreditation, it allows practices to go above and beyond, and just provide a high standard of excellence, not just within the walls of the practice anymore. This can be something that they can do in a vehicle and then obviously take directly into the home because this is something that is so vital and so close to everybody's hearts. So, and I did just want to say, practices are already seeing these appointments. We're already supporting chronic pain management, geriatric, quality of life care. So let's take another introspective look and see how we can work to just make some improvements, however small they may be. But accreditation can help offer the reassurance that we really are doing everything that we can, both mentally and emotionally, and obviously physically for our patients.
Yeah, I love that. So the idea that we all want to do the best in these very important, very precious moments between families and their pets as they say goodbye to them. We want to improve and um, sort of elevate that process as much as we can. And then we also want to
Yeah.
give um, clients who are maybe trying to decide where they're going to go for these services,
Mhm.
sort of that benchmark that they can look at and say, okay, I know what AHA is, I know what they mean, and now I know that I can get that same level of high quality care for end
Absolutely.
of life as well.
Absolutely. This is a great way to show value for your clients and your pet parents. 100%.
Yes. Um, and and practices who want to pursue that. So if they're a traditional practice and they do more than if they're doing more than in-home euthanasia, if they're offering other services, then they would need to either be accredited for AAHA by AAHA already in the traditional pathway, or be in the process of that in
That
order
is
to add
correct.
on the end-of-life accreditation, correct?
Yes. Yes, that is
Okay.
correct, Dr. Singler. And
Okay.
I do just want to clarify right now, our referral friends, our referral members, this is not something that they're eligible for right now. That may change in the future, but this is just for our traditional kind of GP practices. And then any mobile practices who offer wellness support currently are not eligible right now. This is strictly something we wanted to focus on for our euthanasia mobile only practices. So, like I said, this is the first model outside of our traditional standards that we have done. So hopefully this can pave the pathway for more. But we do have some parameters surrounding end of life care. So I hope that helps clarify.
Yeah, and just like everybody else, I think we at AHA are always learning and growing and trying to figure out
Yeah.
what is the next thing that we want to be able to offer so that we can continue that standard of excellence.
Yeah.
So I agree. I love that we're trying to find ways that we can grow
Yes.
and see what
Yep.
what to offer above and beyond what we're already doing.
Yep.
And I wanted to ask you, Margaret, for the practices that are maybe just kind of starting on their journey where they're trying to look at their end of life care um, offerings, and they feel like, okay, I don't know. I want to learn more. I don't feel like
Yeah.
I'm quite ready there yet in terms of going down that accreditation pathway. I know you had mentioned when we talked previously that there are some other really good resources in terms of courses and things, trainings that practices can pursue if they're wanting to learn more about ways that they can sort of prepare themselves for accreditation, or just otherwise provide the best quality end of life care that they can. What types of resources do you usually recommend to practices that
Yeah.
feel like they're kind of still on that journey?
Yeah, there's so many out there, Dr. Singler, and we could have a whole session on what some of these
I'm
courses
sure we
are.
could.
But there's AHA has a great one off the top of my head. So it's our end of life care certification program through AHA Learning. So that's a 3-part course that goes into hospice and palliative care, and then offers also an in-depth look at euthanasias. So it offers a 3-part, well-rounded kind of curriculum. Um, that's a great one. That is available in AHA Learning. I have taken that one, and it's been a great kind of stepping stone to kind of get us into this mindset. And then anything as far as additional CE out there. There's courses available through IAAHPC, so the International Animal Hospice of Palliative Care. They offer wonderful resources. And the CADA course is wonderful. That is specific to a euthanasia model and goes very much in depth at just communication techniques and, kind of learning how to phrase things, what to say, what not to say. So there's so many. Lap of Love has great ones, but I definitely would start with the one on AHA Learning, as that is going to give a really good overview of end of life care as a whole.
And I know I asked you when we talked the other day, but can you share what that acronym is? The ACADA.
So yeah, so it's the Companion Animal Euthanasia Training Academy, and it was so it's Dr. Kathy Cooney's organization, and she actually helped she was the founding member of the End of Life Care Standards in the task force. And so she's been a vital just team member with us, and we're very grateful for this. So we have a wonderful partnership with her, and she was one of the ones who helped bring End of Life Care accreditation to light, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I love all the collaboration. I love all of
Yeah.
the different voices that are out there adding to the collective knowledge that we have, so that we can all learn and be inspired from each other. Because I
Yep.
think that is so true that we can all reach for different resources
Hmm.
and sort of incorporate what makes the most sense and
Hmm.
what works best.
And we all want to raise awareness for this in every way that we can because it is so important. And yes, you're right. The collaboration with different organizations. We work very closely now with Caring Pathways, who is an accredited practice with end of life care, and they are just all inspiring to work with. So it's been wonderful.
I love that. Um, and then one of the things that maybe we've talked a little bit about this on a previous podcast episode, and those that are already members of AHA have more of an understanding of it. But the standards of accreditation. So the standards of accreditation are what a practice is sort of evaluated in terms of when the decision is being made to accredit them or reaccredit them. And it covers, for a traditional practice, I'm not telling you this, obviously, this, but for our listeners, a number of different fields from patient care to
Mhm.
surgery to communication to workplace safety, all of these different things.
Yeah.
How does that change for end of life care? I mean, because it's
Yeah.
this totally separate set of standards for accreditation, correct?
Correct. So, as I mentioned, there was a task force that was put in place to bring these standards to light. And they were specifically members of that had a focus with end of life care. And Dr. Cooney was kind of the head of that task force. So there are some traditional standards that have been brought over. Um, but then there's a plethora of specific end of life care standards that are only pertinent to end of life care. So there's 21 mandatory standards, and then there's 16 sections of standards. So like I said, there are some crossover. So if our traditional members choose to add this on, you will see that. But there's a reason for that. And then I would say the three kind of big sections that I find important and that stand out to me with end of life care are continuing education, medical records, and patient care. Continuing education, this section, the passing percentage has been raised. So that's wonderful. And there's a lot of resources and things in there that are really designed to just bring awareness to end of life care. A lot of resources, like I said, industry-wide resources, classes, courses. There's standards in there that speak to working with a grief counselor, a veterinary social worker, and then also just a regular social worker. So there's a lot of great context in there that we can bring back to our practices and then help in turn offer those to our pet parents. And then the medical records and patient care sections really offer a really great stepping stone to just some templates that we can look at adding in our records. So specifically to euthanasia, how do you have a ranking system perhaps for euthanasias? What does perhaps some communication techniques look like? And then for practices that do not offer hospice and palliative care, and we have quite a few of those, they help to kind of bring just some very basic awareness to something that you could add to your wellness exams to your senior appointments. So just adding lines in the sand, goals for your patients, things like that. So it just provides a really in-depth look of things that you can add, easy things that you can add to your records that you haven't really thought of before. So it's definitely something that I recommend taking a look at if you're interested.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of like things you haven't thought of, like I'm intrigued by the idea of medical records. I mean, I certainly understand that from the standpoint of hospice care. When I think of a euthanasia, I would say my medical
Yeah,
records are probably some of the
yeah,
shortest
yeah,
and least detailed of pretty much um any type of visit that I have. And you mentioned kind of ranking the euthanasias. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I don't know if I've ever
yeah,
heard that before.
yeah. So one of the standards that we like to bring up or conversations we like to bring up is again how to learn from all of these experiences, all of these situations. So a ranking system could be something that practices could do. Um, Perhaps it's a 1, 2, 3 or a green, yellow, red. So at the end of the euthanasia, is that appointment was it a green situation? Did everything go smoothly for both the pet parent and also the patient? Because that's the most important. And just kind of notate what that looked like. A yellow may be a little bit more of, of a difficult situation. Perhaps it went well for the patient, but the pet parent struggled. So just notating that may be something that we want to come back to, or a situation that we can learn from. And then a red is obviously just something that did not go well. For whatever reason, that's something that we need to address collectively with your medical director or your team in the practice, and perhaps address in due time with the client. So these are things that we can continue to learn from, and there's all sorts of conversations that can be had, and we can learn how to have those conversations. That's what's really important. So that's just one example of some of the things that we talk about. I do also advocate for a pain scale to be notated as well, even in our euthanasias. We consider pain the fourth vital sign. And even with euthanasia, we do want to have that notated because it is very important. So those are just some things that we can speak to. And then, whether or not that's any type of a brief exam, we do like to have just a little bit of that notation as well, to show that it was truly, notated and that this was the final decision for the pet parent.
Okay, so pain associated with the patient's sort of presenting condition and contributing to that decision whether to euthanize or not. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. And then the idea of the ranking could be sort of a debriefing, an opportunity for debriefing.
Correct.
And like you said, sort of learning and evaluating and making changes if needed. Okay. Yeah, I like that.
We do.
I think.
I was just gonna add, we do like to, like I said, add any type of learning opportunities. And, with client communication, there's bound to be, grief is such a powerful emotion, as it should be. And, our clients, through no fault of their own, just can get aggressive or upset. And we need to learn how to handle ourselves in those moments. And that's something that can help with just kind of a simple ranking system like this.
I think probably all of us who have been in practice can think of some euthanasias that we would probably call, like when you said like the green light, yellow light, red light. I'm like, I could think of some red lights, and they're from, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Because those don't leave you.
Yeah. No, they don't.
So
they do not.
Of course they probably don't leave the families if they were there for them, but they don't leave us either. So I love that idea of being very methodical so that we can make opportunities. We can take those opportunities to learn and make changes so we have fewer of those moments.
Yeah.
As we go along. Yeah. And then you started talking about this, the idea of making the euthanasia itself, kind of this ranking system would be in part to help kind of reduce the stress associated with the euthanasia for everyone, for the pet, for the family. Is that something apart from sort of the ranking system? Are there other ways that is sort of built into the accreditation process and standards?
Yeah. So I think a big piece of this module of end of life care is like I said, taking an introspective look at how we're currently operating and not just focusing solely on the appointment itself, but everything that goes into this appointment. So the very first phone call that the practice will receive from this pet parent, from this client, and then to the very end when they receive ashes back, or if they don't do ashes, when they're walking out the door and you may never see them again, what is going to be that lasting impression that pet parent will have? So it's really just taking a look at everything in between. We talk a lot about just basic communication skills. Like I said, there's some resources in the continuing education section that just offer great just communication skills, how to provide empathy, what reflective listening is, how to do an open-ended question, remembering your nonverbal cues. That is a big piece with end-of-life care that a lot of us just aren't, or we casually forget in the moment. And we also speak about something that I learned in my knowledge, and as I've kind of been going through this, are the 3 C's. And this is compassion, confidence, and control. So this is something that I did learn from the CADA course that I really took to heart, because we can just continue to be ourselves, but our pet parents look to us for compassion and also just communication. And if we can maintain those 3 C's, that right there is going to be crucial for getting them through the appointment. And I also know in grief, we have a huge capacity to be understood, but not the capacity to understand. And I learned that from one of my other modules through IAAHPC, and that also is really important to take home. So again, communication is a huge piece with end of life care. So that's something that we do talk a great deal about. And then just how to take care of the caregiver and the pet parent. These appointments take up a huge amount of space, a huge amount of awareness for our team. So allowing us to have that reflective time after the appointment is really apparent too. So there's all sorts of tricks that we talk about, ways that we can help identify those when we go through the accreditation.
I'm really stuck on that quote that you gave, in grief, that there's a huge capacity to
Mm-hmm.
be understood, but not to understand.
Yep.
Because
And that
we
was
throw,
something. Yep. And I will not take credit for that. Obviously, that was something
yeah,
that I
no,
learned from the
I
module, but
understand.
it really struck home because it's so true.
Well, I'm just thinking, during the euthanasia appointment, I mean, one of the things, I'll go in the room and, we've had this conversation, however we've arrived at it, we've made this decision that hopefully everyone feels is the best possible thing that we could do. And then we're talking about the euthanasia, and, we want families to be informed. And so then we throw all this information about them. And this is what is probably going to happen. This is what I'm going to do. This is what might happen. This is what it means. This is, if there's a complication, this is what we'll do. And this is, what that might mean. And like, it's so hard to process that information and retain it when, like you said, are in the throes of grief. And I think we can all speak to just when we're stressed and when we're trying to process a lot of information, that most of that doesn't stick, doesn't
Yeah.
stick.
Yeah. And
or it doesn't get retained in the way that it's delivered. So,
right. And our clients, I use clients and pet parents obviously synonymously, but they're not going to remember what was said, but they
yeah,
will remember how they were felt, how we made them feel. And that's
right.
another big takeaway. So looking at the entire euthanasia as a whole, and again, bringing end of life care into this, how can we sort of standardize what this process looks like so it is going to be streamlined and as efficient and also seamless as possible for these moments?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, really see the value in wanting to make the whole experience, whether it's a hospice experience or a euthanasia experience, as minimally stressful and as positive as it could possibly be. And I'm sure there are those out there who are thinking about the end of life accreditation process and wondering what that might look like for them, particularly for those who maybe haven't had experience with an accreditation evaluation. And I would imagine that it's different, but there are probably similarities between the traditional pathway and the end of life care. But what does the evaluation really look like? I would imagine there's a
Yeah.
lot of touch points even before it comes to the actual evaluation. And I know, it can sound like kind of a scary word for like a test,
Yeah.
that you pass or you fail. But like, what does that really look like
Yeah.
when AHA practice consultants or accreditation specialists go into a practice or start that process? Like, what is that relationship like, and
Yeah.
what does that process look like? Can you kind of
Yeah.
shed a little light on that?
Absolutely. And this is something that we are very passionate about here at AHA. Everybody here who is a member of the team here is either a credential technician or a CBPM. So are all very informed. We've all been in the industry for a very long time. We know the ins and outs of a practice. We know the struggles, we know the hardships. Um, and we really want to be a second set of eyes for your practice. We see things from a different light, which help us in this evaluation process. So our members, through no fault of our members, just the evaluation process can be very rigorous. It can be very overwhelming, and we really try and not have it be that way. We do have each member or any practice in the country has their own dedicated pairing. So they have their own dedicated accreditation specialist and practice consultant. And those two work together simultaneously to help support the member, whether that be constant emails, member meetings, standards questions, on-site visits prior to the evaluation, all of these things that we can do to help ease any type of overwhelming fear or just kind of scariness of the evaluation. There's a lot of standards, and rightfully so. You can go through them and just kind of choose which ones you may want to adhere to. So the mandatory standards obviously do need to be met. And then practices can choose from our other points-based standards as to which ones they want to adhere to. And then as long as they're passing those sections, each section has its own passing percentage. As long as they are passing those sections, we can continue with the evaluation. A lot of the value that we bring is in medical records as well. So we take a look at what practices are doing, how they're notating their records. It is a legal document, so we do like to go through those together with, a fine-tooth comb if we can, to help, add some things that maybe we may want to be looking for or may want to add here, should anything come to fruition with medical records in a court of law. So the evaluation itself can take about 4 to 5 hours, sometimes a little bit longer, depending on new practices. But you have heard from us and probably seen us prior to the evaluations. We're there to help every step of the way. And yeah, we love what we do. We're very passionate. Like I said, we are all in this industry. We love this industry, and this offers us a really great way to give back to our practices. So we, our team is standing by to answer whatever questions that we have or that you have. And then end of life care obviously takes it to, that extra step in helping you learn just some communication techniques, like I said, tricks of the trade, things like that. So yeah, we're here for you. We know what you're going through.
Yeah, so everything that I've ever heard about an evaluation and sort of the process that leads up to it has helped me to understand that it's not in a process where someone's going to show up and say, I got you, I found all, like an inspection.
Correct.
We're all used to the idea of a state board inspection or
Right.
a DEA inspection,
Right.
where they're going and they're looking to find faults and they're looking to, see if you pass or if you fail, and you might get a fine or you might get in trouble. But this whole process is such that you've been sort of nurtured and supported in a way to try
Absolutely.
to set you up for success.
Absolutely.
And could you help? Let's just say you go out to a practice and you start an evaluation and you see, we're not quite there yet. What does that process look like from there?
Yeah. So there are certain things that we do look for, like I said. And I do just want to be clear. So we are consultants. We're not inspectors. We do not go through with a white glove and, look for dust on the top of the kennels or check for cleanliness, things like that. We really are consultants, and we help identify potential OSHA violations that we see, such as secondary labels, safety training, safety posters, things like that. That is a huge component. So we are not OSHA and we are not the DEA either. We help keep you OSHA and DEA compliant. So it's a good kind of awareness with that a lot of our practices think that we do come through similar to OSHA, but that is absolutely not the case. So when we do find something that we need to address. We are trained to have those conversations very, like I said, very quiet, very empathetically, and discuss it in the moment. So whether that be a mandatory violation, or we're deficient in points, those are things that we talk about and we handle as they come up. We always have practices that can choose what they want to do, whether they do want to continue with accreditation or not, and that's entirely up to the practice. We're not going to force anything. AAHA is a voluntary organization, so you are raising your hand to say you want to go through this. So if you want to continue, then we will continue with whatever help you need, whether that be better assistance in your record keeping, some surgery protocols, anything related to anesthetic monitoring, in specific with end of life care, certain things regarding, like I said, some medical records, some euthanasia tidbits and communication aspects. We just determine which section needs the focus, and we go from there. And then we do give practices the option to have a reevaluation within, we try to shoot for about 6 months afterwards. And like I said, we are in continual communication with you, with the practice consultant and your accreditation specialist, so that you're not alone and you can answer any questions that you may have or ask any questions that you may have.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I could have grilled
Yeah.
you on that a little bit, but I
No,
just
it's
wanted
okay.
to. I,
Yeah.
it feels to me, as you've described it, a very supportive process. Um, no one is. I would imagine there's always some stress associated with an evaluation, just because everyone wants to do well, and that accreditation is an exciting thing to have. But in terms of the relationship with your AHA team, I think that sounds like that's a very supportive and open relationship.
Yep.
So I'm
And
glad that that's the case.
it is. And just one other thing to note, we always have practices that want to get 100%, even with end of
Of
life care.
course,
And it's just
of
know that
course.
it's not possible, because the way that we have the evaluation structured and the rule out questions. So know that there's always ways to improve, and that's how it should be. Nobody's going to be perfect, and nobody should be perfect. And there's always things that we can work on to improve. And again, end of life care helps bring that back into fruition, that as a really pivotal example with this.
That could be a hard thing to hear. We've got an audience perhaps of overachievers and recovering
Sure.
perfectionists and all those
Sure.
things. But yes, we would all agree there's always room to improve. So good to know that when we're
Yes.
not getting 100%, that nobody else is either. So
No. Correct.
thank you.
Correct.
Thank you for sharing that little tidbit. Um, okay. So I want to talk about more about euthanasias and hospice care, because I know there are just so many individual topics within that. I guess one last thing I wanted to ask about accreditation. So you mentioned like euthanasia only practices. So some euthanasia only practices also offer hospice care, and then there may be some that don't. So how does that affect end of life care
Yeah.
accreditation?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I will fully admit that we are continuing to learn from these evaluations, just as practices are learning from us. Um, and I like to say that they're beautifully nuanced, because they are. Each practice has its own business model and what they want to focus on, and that's absolutely rightfully so. So we just take each situation as it comes. We do have practices that are euthanasia only that are accredited. We do have practices that maybe focus a little bit on hospice care. And then we have some that are full bore euthanasia and hospice and palliative care. So we just take each member as they come in, and we go from there. We are working on adding, some more parameters around some of the standards, to help truly tailor them to what the practice needs. But like I said, we're continuing to learn, and we want to have those conversations. So just remember that it's hospice and palliative care. So there's foundations of animal hospice. It includes euthanasia, palliative care, natural death, pet loss support, and just body care. So we're already seeing and you're already doing hospice and palliative care to an extent in the practice. It just hasn't been a main focus, and that's okay. And if you want to get there, we can certainly talk about that. But if not, we can absolutely work towards accreditation as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
These are not necessarily maybe accreditation specific questions, but I know you and I have talked about this before, and I have just loved hearing some of the ideas that you've shared with me. And so I wanted to see if maybe you could share some of them with the rest of our listeners. So you had mentioned just like some of the creative things that you've seen practices do around euthanasia. We know a lot of practices will have kind of like a dedicated room, like what do they call it, a rainbow room or a comfort room, kind of a room that they've set aside, or at least that they use when needed for that
Yeah.
purpose, and perhaps have decorated as such, and maybe have like a nice couch or more space, or some decor on the walls, whatever they've decided works best for their for their hospital, for their practice. We're talking of course about not not mobile services, but brick and mortar practices. But then you have shared with me some great ideas about practices that maybe don't have a dedicated room, about some of the creative things that they have done to really still make that client feel like that space was kind of intentionally set up for them. Like, they knew they were coming, or, they've pivoted and determined that's what's going on, and just make that family feel more at ease. Can you
Yeah.
share some of those?
Yeah. And this is an area that I love to talk about because the sky's the limit here.
Yeah.
And it is not mandatory by any means to have a comfort room. Some practices can't, just due to size or whatever it is, and that's absolutely fine. So some of the things that we speak about in the standards, such as like home care and examination facilities, the wording in some of those standards is very specific. So it talks about areas. So areas for these appointments to take place in. So not necessarily confining to a room. Now you can use a room, but some practices will have a gazebo outside, or this may happen in the bed of the truck, if the patient is just, if that's their best, most favorite spot in the world. So it opens up this mindset that it doesn't always have to be in a room. But when I talk to practices about this, I really have them involve their team, and have them just kind of think about things that they may want to bring into the practice. Do they have a euthanasia caddy? What could be in that caddy? Are there tissues, makeup wipes, just a small mirror, water, a mint, some coloring material for children, goodbye kisses. There's all sorts of things. I've seen lovely rock gardens, where you can actually, make a little note, and place it in the rock garden as a remembrance. I've seen chalkboards, both on the wall itself, and then literally just small little chalkboards that both the team can write little notes on, and then like kids could draw pictures of, in the practice. Like I said, it doesn't have to be as a true comfort room. We love to try and have maybe some soft lighting if we can. So not, something that's a little bit softer than the typical exam lights. Maybe a water feature. I've seen a lot of practices play some music, which is really sweet. Um, and then, I've seen a lot of practices actually make the room the name of the patient that's coming in. So this is Henry's room, and they will actually write Henry's room on top of it. Or say, now entering Henry's room on the chalkboard that they have, and really hit home on just how special this should be. And just embrace your practice's creativity, because your team is I guarantee going to have some amazing ideas. So bring them into this and see what happens. So
I love that. I feel like I would love that, having lost a couple of pets in the past 2 years. I love that idea of the room being named after my pet. Um, and also just going into a practice, an AAHA accredited practice, a couple of years ago when we had to say goodbye to our senior cat, and they had just nature music playing or nature sounds, and they gave us a doorbell type thing so that we could be left alone and not be asked every 5 minutes if we were ready, so that we could just let them know. Um, and I've seen other practices that I've done relief work institute that as well.
Yeah, and the last thing I was just gonna say is, regarding not necessarily having a comfort room or, just using regular exam rooms, try and make it whatever you think is gonna be best. Gone are the days where this client can't use room 5 because their pet was euthanized in room 5 last time when they were there. So changing that perception, changing that mindset, again, to shift that perception is gonna be really powerful.
Yeah, I can't remember how many times. I can't even tell you how many times either like you said, we see that notification like no room 5, whatever, or maybe there wasn't a note or someone didn't see the note, and then we do end up putting them in room 5.
Yep.
And then I come in to see the client, and the client's like, this is where my cat was put to sleep 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
And they remember.
Yep. And
But
we're human. Obviously those mistakes are going to happen. And if that truly is something that the client doesn't want, then we'll respect that. But we can try to really change that perception. And hopefully in turn that client will understand and see that and
yeah.
want to remember the joyous and, heartwarming feelings that they felt in that room.
Yeah, I love that. Being able to walk back into that room and say, this room was Henry's room the last time I was here. And you let my kids draw on a chalkboard, and there was we could all be in here and spend as much time as we wanted to, and the lighting was low, and the music was comforting, and everybody knew we were coming. And yeah, I agree. Instead of changing that from kind of a traumatic experience to kind of filling that in as a loving experience and a comforting experience. That's so important. And you mentioned the goodbye kisses. I'm sure a lot of other people know about them, but I don't know. I've been out of practice for a couple of years, and that was not something that I ever did. And I I wish I had been doing it all this time, because it's such an amazing idea. Can you just talk about it? And I've seen other people online
Yeah.
do other things with like Oreos
Yep.
but can you
Big
talk about
Macs
the
and
yeah,
all
can you just
sorts of
talk about the
things.
goodbye
Yeah.
kisses though? Because it's so sweet.
Yeah. It's something so simple but leaves a lasting impression. And that's what we're trying to do. There's all sorts of sayings that you can do. No animal or no dog should go to heaven without knowing the taste of chocolate. So
Mhm.
just giving a little tiny Hershey kiss, or as many as they want,
Mhm.
unwrapping that or having the patient unwrap it is sometimes really fun. I've seen that before.
Oh.
And you just love it. So all sorts of things. Um, like I said, the sky's the limit. So whatever you find is your special kind of thing that you're proud of in the practice, we would love to hear about it, because this is how we learn. This is how we grow. It's just by talking to other professionals that have done certain things. That's what I really enjoy about it.
And I've also heard you mentioned chalk a little bit, but the idea of like sidewalk chalk and like eating things. Can you talk about some of the ways that you know that practices have
Oh,
incorporated?
I've seen, yeah, one of the euthanasias that sticks in my brain. Of course, I have some not so nice ones. I try not to use the word negative, or try not use that term if I can. But a really positive situation that happened was, we actually drew a rainbow bridge on the ground for a patient, and then after they were done, after the procedure, after they were euthanized, we actually carried the patient over the rainbow bridge, and the pet parent was on the other side of that. So they were meeting in the rainbow bridge, which was, I thought, was very apropos, and just it was lovely, because it was done right and it wasn't rushed. And this pet parent, I know, that left a very, very well and happy memory for her, which is what we're trying to do. So there's all sorts of things. Sidewalk chalk, like I said, you can leave little notes, like handwritten notes, like memories from some of the team. We loved Henry. I remember when he was a puppy, he came in, and ate a sock, whatever it is, like all of these little things that we can think of that bring joy. They can talk about what the top 5 things are that they loved about their pet. And then, I've seen the pet parent write those down. All of these things, just giving your patients and your clients an avenue to express themselves can be really powerful and something that we haven't really done before.
That's so sweet. I love that. And then you mentioned a couple of these other things too that I want to circle back to. Just these ideas around hospice supported natural death, active death. Can you talk to us a little about that? Because I think we do. Um, we see, I think often, I don't want to speak for everyone in all situations, but often we talk about euthanasia as this gift that we're able to give. We're able to relieve suffering. And it's a privilege to be able to do that. And it's something that I think all regard as very important, to be able to relieve suffering, both for the patient and for their family. But there are going to be some situations in which that doesn't end up happening
Yeah.
for any variety of reasons, or it's not what the family wants. So I haven't heard as much before talking with you about some of these other terms. Can you explain how what they are, like how veterinary practices can be
Yeah.
involved in them?
Yeah. And I want to understand and reflect that this is it's a very heavy thought. It's a very heavy conversation. I am not a hospice and palliative care expert. I'm obviously not a hospice and palliative care trained veterinarian. I have taken several courses to help me understand what this is through my learnings. And I know that this is also still a very new concept in the veterinary industry, especially for our general practitioners. It's important to know. So a hospice supported natural death. So it's not a natural death. It's a hospice supported natural death. So there is a very big difference. And it is done and performed by trained hospice and palliative care veterinarians. If our general practitioners, want to learn about that, there are very, very great courses out there that can help them become a trained hospice and palliative care veterinarian. But this is where you would be utilizing a trained professional, a trained veterinarian for hospice and palliative care. And it's important to know, so animal hospice, what I've learned and come to appreciate is animal hospice, it's not turning a blind eye. It's not neglect. It's the exact opposite of that. These patients are treated very, very well. They're on and maintained on a very high dose of medications. And this could be the wishes of the caregivers, of the pet parent. And that's something that we need to respect and honor. We do need to take a look at how we internalize some of our feelings and our struggles with certain situations and remove that judgment as best as we can. And that is what's really hard. But a hospice supported natural death is just that. It is something that is done with a trained professional. And then something that I've also learned is an active death is within 4 hours. So anything longer than that is when there would be interventions in some way, shape, or form by the veterinarian. And there's also some things that practices can do, such as a comfort kit or crisis kit. Those are 2 very, very different things. A comfort kit is just that. It's medications that help provide comfort, such as GI medications, perhaps something to help with appetite suppression, things like that. And then a crisis kit obviously would have a more heavy duty pain medication, sedation, a seizure medication, anticonvulsants, things like that. So, and again, those are administered and dispensed by trained professionals who understand what those are. And then obviously given to the client, and the client understands exactly what they are as well. So the big thing that I've come to realize is try not to shy away from these conversations. It's all a learning experience. It's all going to be something that will help raise awareness and help us learn. So just try not to shy away from those conversations. And, we find that a lot of caregivers just want to be educated. They want the time, they want to have a true understanding of what to expect. And we need to give them that. We need to give them, whether it's a quality of life visit, and doesn't necessarily go to a euthanasia that it may be booked. That's okay. We need to be commended for doing that if we shift gears a little bit. If they're not ready, then that's okay. And we need to give them the time and the space to get ready for that.
As you were talking, I was just thinking about how this could be such a wonderful extension of the idea uh, of a spectrum of care as it relates to end of life care. And as you said, these are not cases where obviously every case is different, every situation is different, but these are not cases where, I mean, we hear a lot, this idea of a client coming in and saying, I would like them to pass naturally. And there are a lot of different reasons why they might say that, and there can be some significant guilt around making that decision to euthanize, in addition to whatever other cultural, religious, other beliefs go along with that. But these are not cases where we're just kind of, um, hoping for the best and hoping that it's peaceful and not really intervening in any way. As you said, they're very, very carefully thought out and managed cases. So I love that veterinary medicine is sort of expanding to to include that that space that clearly needs compassionate and knowledgeable care
Yeah.
for the benefit of the patient
And
and their
it is
family.
still very rare to have these situations. But in the evaluations that I've performed, I've seen quite a few medical records that notated this, and they were beautifully written. They were beautifully done. The follow-up was there, the grief counseling was there, the support was there, and it was wonderful. And this also is a really great opportunity to bridge the gap with some of our other mobile practitioners that do end of life care. Utilize an expert who truly can give this client what they want. And that right there is going to help just continue with the advocacy that we're all trying to do in the industry, which I think can be really special.
This has been such. I mean, I know it's probably not hard for any of us to imagine that a conversation about euthanasia would be uplifting and inspiring, but it
I
really
do.
has been. It really has been. So thank you so much for that. Thank you
My
for
goodness.
sharing all of this with us. I love that, as you go and do an evaluation and you are helping prepare teams to provide the best and most compassionate and most up-to-date care, you're also learning from the evaluations. You're learning from their medical records. You're learning from the work that they're already doing. I that's one of the things I love the most about our profession, is that we're all learning from each other. We're all inspiring each other.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
thank you for that example of that. And on that topic, I like to always ask, if there's one thing that you would like to share with all of us that you are excited about or happy about in veterinary medicine, whether it's something that's going on now or something that you're excited about for the future.
Yeah. I mean, I know this sounds like a little bit of a cop out, but it honestly is this conversation. This has been really eye-opening for me. And I'm very humbled to be a part of it. Like I said, I've learned so much, and our members that we do have are thriving, and they're doing this really well, and they want more. They want to continue to raise awareness. And every time I speak with one of these team members, it reinvigorates me. So I'm excited to see where this can go, because every practice really should be wanting to do this, because it really can bring a lot of value into their practice. and just continue with the human animal bond. That's what we're all in this industry for. So, like I said, I know it seems a little, a little kind of like a cop out, but it's not. Like, I'm excited for where this can go, which is end of life care as a whole. In this profession, our clients are taking care of our patients in a very different manner. There's a lot more emphasis on veterinary care, um, our senior pets. So let's bring awareness to that. What can we do within our practice to show that we really want to see these pets and we have an importance? We don't want to do what we can for them.
Oh, well, I don't think that's a cop out at all. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Having just come back from VMX, biggest veterinary conference in the world, I know that's what uplifts me too, are all those conversations and learning from everyone else and finding community in our shared love for veterinary medicine. So I think it's very important. Wonderful. All right. Well, are there any other final thoughts that you'd like to leave with our audience, or any ways that you want to share with them about how they can either get involved, learn more, pursue accreditation, reach out, ask questions, anything you'd like to share?
Mhm. I do just want to say, this topic really does hit home with me. It affects euthanasia. It affects all of us in different capacities and in every stage of our lives. But when you're going through it personally, this has really changed, like I said, my perception, and has given me a really good perspective and some hope on some things that I'm dealing with personally. And I hope that that could be the case for other individuals who are shying away from this, who do not want to have a conversation, who really struggle with this topic. And I understand why. But just know that you're not alone, and be open to this conversation, be open to some of the positive effects that it can have on just yourself and within your practice. And that in turn will help balance out compassion fatigue. It will help balance out and give us resilience, and hopefully in turn then keep us in the industry longer, because I know that it's hard. And I know that these euthanasias take time. But just know that you're not alone and keep having the conversations. So I hope that you can make euthanasias the best part of your day. And yeah, I thank you so much, Dr. Singler. It's been great. And I look forward to continuing to have this conversation with you all.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Where can people learn more if they're interested in end of life accreditation?
Yeah, so we have your dedicated team. So we're all on the website. So you can navigate to AAHA.org and look up your accreditation team there. You can also email directly, so at AAHA@AAHA.org, if you have any questions, want to speak more about end of life care, and we'll get you to the right team and go from there. So we're standing by. We're here to help. There's no silly question, like I said. So we're all in this together, and we're right alongside you. So please reach out, and we look forward to talking with you.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Dr. Singler. It's a big pleasure.